Evening, guys. Today we'll start talking about an essay called The Task of the Translator by Walter Benjamin. To begin with, this particular essay on translation precedes everything else, every other theorist that you have read so far. This is an essay written in 1923. So that means Benjamin is writing way before Jacobson, Levy, Nida, Lefebvre, George Steiner. So Benjamin, in that sense, is one of the forefathers of translation theory. This particular essay is considered to be a seminal text of translation theory, because Benjamin, in this essay, we'll see very soon, shifts the focus of the discussion altogether as far as translation is concerned. Before Benjamin, translation is talked about in terms of fidelity and loyalty to the source text, etc., etc. Benjamin changes the game in 1923 completely. There is a reason that we are reading this essay at the very fag end of the course. This essay brings up ideas, although it is written in 1923, although it predates the other theorists that we have already discussed and talked about. This essay brings in ideas that are extremely radical and very often counterintuitive. It goes against common sense. So you'll have to actually apply your mind and try to understand what Benjamin is trying to say. So radical and counterintuitive ideas about translation, that is what Walter Benjamin's The Task of the Translator is about. We'll just discuss the ideas. You can decide whether Benjamin is making sense or not as far as with reference to all the other theorists that you have read. But the ideas are important because they are very seminal ideas which gave birth to discussions, debates, arguments throughout the 20th century. An essay written in 1923 was discussed, debated, argued over throughout the 20th century. So the ideas that this essay contains are important, so we need to understand them. Okay, to introduce the essay and the author, Walter Benjamin is a German philosopher. A German philosopher, theorist, historian, in general a polymath. He has written over a wide range of subjects throughout his life. He has delved into a wide range of philosophy. His interests are extremely varied in that sense. Walter Benjamin is writing in the first half of the 20th century. He is also a translator. In fact, this particular essay is actually an introduction to one of Benjamin's translation of Charles Baudelaire, the French poet. So Benjamin is translating the French poet Baudelaire, one of his particular books, Tableau Parisien, into German. And in the process of that translation, he is writing an introduction to his own translation of Baudelaire in German. So what we are reading, in fact, is also a product of translation. We are reading Walter Benjamin in English. The essay is originally written in German. So we are also, in this particular case, reading a product of translation. Walter Benjamin, in this particular essay, while introducing his own translation, delves into what exactly the title of the essay tells us. He is talking about, he is debating the actual task of the translator. And Benjamin, as I said, has very radical ideas about what the actual task of a translator should be. Not what it is all the time, but what a translator should focus on. What a translator should keep in mind while doing a translation. What is the function, quote unquote, of a translator in the process of translation? What is the purpose of a translator in the process of translation? Okay, so I've introduced the author, introduced the essay. Now let's move on to the arguments. Walter Benjamin starts off with a very interesting statement. Benjamin is saying that the consideration of the reader or the spectator in appreciating a work of art is never fruitful. In other words, Benjamin is saying that while appreciating a particular work of art, be it a book, a poem, a painting, a dance, a song, while appreciating a work of art, considering what the reader thinks about it is not relevant. Why is it not relevant? Because according to Benjamin, poems are not written for readers. Paintings are not made for spectators or viewers. Songs are not sung for an audience. The idea seems counterintuitive, but please understand the philosophy behind it. Benjamin believes that art is the highest mode of self-expression. Art is the highest mode of self-expression where the reader or the audience is not really relevant. Think about it. Why do we sing songs? Do we necessarily sing songs to please an audience? Do we necessarily write poems to please a reader? No. Benjamin says, and I am quoting, there is a very important line. I am quoting from Benjamin's essay. Benjamin says, no poem is intended for the reader, no picture for the beholder, no symphony for the listener. In appreciation of a work of art or an art form, consideration of the receiver never proves fruitful. So Benjamin believes that art in itself has an independent existence. Art is like a living thing. Any art form is like a living thing, and it has an independent existence. Its existence, its appreciation, its life is not necessarily tied to a particular reader, to a particular audience, to a particular listener, to a particular symphony. The work of art exists by itself, for itself. It is created for itself. It is created as a need for self-expression. It is not created to please someone else, to please the reader, to please the audience, or to please the spectator. That is Benjamin's first contention. So, a particular poem, think about it. A particular poem has been written not with the reader in mind. No poem, Benjamin says, is intended for the reader. Then Benjamin asks, with mock innocence, that if the original is not intended for the reader, why should the translation be intended for the reader? Think about this. Think about this point. What is our general understanding of the process of translation or the purpose of translation? Why does a translator translate? This is the question. What is the job of a translator? Why is a translator taking up a particular text and translating it into another language? The commonsensical answer, the common sense answer to this question, the normal intuitive answer to this question, why does a translator translate, would be this. A translator translates to bring the original to a readership who cannot read the original, right? The translator is translating with the intention of bringing the original text written in a foreign language to a readership who is not acquainted with that foreign language and therefore cannot read the original text. Therefore, the common sense interpretation, common sense approach to the task of a translator is that the translator is translating for a reader. And Walter Benjamin is questioning this very basis of translation. Walter Benjamin is saying that if the original was not written for the translator, written for a reader, written with a reader in mind, why would the translation be done with a reader in mind? Pleasing a reader was not the consideration of the original text. If it is truly a work of art, then why should the translator focus on pleasing the reader? What happens when the translator focus on the reader for translation? What happens when the translator keeps the reader in mind, the target reader in mind, and produces a translation that is easily digestible, that can be easily assimilated? What happens, according to Benjamin, is bad translation. Why bad translation? Because remember, the original was never written to please a particular reader. So if the translator is translating with the readership in mind, just the readership in mind, the translator is doing a bad job. That is the first point. A translation done with the reader in mind is a bad translation. The task of the translator, according to Walter Benjamin, is not to please any particular target readership. The target readership is secondary in translation. That is my first point. That is Benjamin's first point. The second point, and this Benjamin writes about this in the second paragraph of the essay. Benjamin writes that what is the purpose of a work of art? Is it merely communication? Is it merely the message? What does a work of art contain? What is the value of that work of art? Is it the message that it contains? If it is that message that is communicated through the work of art, if that is primary, if the content, the message is primary, then a story, the same story, told by me, told by you, told by some random John, and told by William Shakespeare, will have the same value. Think about this. The story of Macbeth. We all know the story of Macbeth. I can narrate to you the story of Macbeth. Charles Lamb and Mary Lamb can narrate to you the story of Macbeth. William Shakespeare can narrate to you the story of Macbeth. The story will remain the same. The message will remain the same. The content will remain the same. But will these three narrations have the same artistic value? Think about this. Benjamin's answer obviously is no. Because a work of art is not about what is being said. A work of art is not about what is being communicated, the message, but about how it is being said. These two things are very different. The work of art becomes a work of art not because what it is saying, not because of the communication, not because of the message that it holds, but because of how it is being said. William Shakespeare tells the same story very differently than I would, and that is why Shakespeare is Shakespeare, right? So not about the content, not about the message, but about how that message is being communicated. Benjamin is coming to his second point. Benjamin is saying a translation that merely focuses on conveying the message of the original to the readership, a translation that merely focuses on communicating the message of the original to the readership is a bad translation, because the message, according to Benjamin, is secondary. Message, according to Benjamin, is inconsequential. What is important is how that message has been communicated in the original. So the first point was a translation which focuses on the readership, focuses on pleasing the reader, is a bad translation because the original was never meant to please a reader. Point number 2 is that a translation that merely focuses on communicating a message, conveying a message that the original has, is a bad translation, because that is not what makes the original the work of art that it is. Not the message, but how the message has been communicated. I'll quote Benjamin once again. Benjamin says, this is what Benjamin says about translations that focus on communicating the message. Benjamin calls it that this actually is the cause of another characteristic of inferior translation, which consequently we may define as the inaccurate transmission of an inessential content. So the inessential content, message is the inessential content, and if the translator is primarily focusing on that, the task of the, according to Benjamin, the translator is not fulfilling his or her true task. Now comes the question: if pleasing the readership is not the translator's task, if communicating the message that is in the original is not the translator's task, what is the task of the translator according to Walter Benjamin? That is the question that Benjamin will answer in this essay. But for today, we'll end here. I'll request you to read up the essay as much as you can. I'll request you to read up the material that I'm sharing over WhatsApp as much as you can. And we'll come back tomorrow evening and we'll talk about what, according to Benjamin, is the task of the translator. Thank you.